Ahoy mateys and welcome aboard, I'm Rattledy Bones, and today I got a video that's gonna rattle your bones.
A few more nights and some still they're not to grow in the Duggar family tree. So how many Duggars will there be?
Today your captain has something truly diabolical for ya, seriously sinister even. Today we talk about the Duggar family. Now, if that name didn't pucker your butthole and shiver down your spine, then I don't know what will, but however, maybe my hark of a tale will put you on the right accord. Today, yes, we be talking about the Duggar family, what they have done, where they have been, and most importantly, what has happened. A quick reminder, mateys, that since we are talking about the Duggar family, your Captain Rattle, as usual, will not be mentioning any of the kids in this time. Will not be naming anybody except for two of the kids, and at this time they are adults. So we will not be mentioning the kids too much, and we won't be talking about them individually. We will talk about what happened to them and how it's horrible to be brought up like that, but make no mistake, I want no hate to any of the innocent children in this video.
A federal jury finds Josh Duggar guilty on receipt and possession of child pornography.
And charged for lewd and lascivious behavior involving unlawful sexual activity with a minor.
Milestones in your children's lives. And with 19 children.
So take a break from swabbing the poop deck or mending the cannons, cause Captain has another tale. So let's drown ourselves in this sinkhole that is the Duggar family. James and Michelle Duggar first started their family with their son Joshua. A little while after, they would unfortunately have a miscarriage with their second child, due to birth control still being active. They would then decide to have as many kids as possible, leaving it up for God to decide. This is known as quiverful. Quiverful being the belief of or philosophy that each child is sent from God for his royal army, and that having as many as possible leads to a happier and holier family, thus beginning their voyage of the 19 kids and counting. A little while after, James, the father of the family, would run for Senate. He would bring his kids with him to one of the polls. This would lead to a viral image that went around starting headlines and in other facets of the internet back in the early 2000s. Eventually, after headlines and articles, it would lead to TLC and Discovery reaching out to do an interview. This online interview would lead to the pantheon of the show 19 Kids and Counting that we know today. For anyone who grew up in the early 2000s, it was a staple for your parents or even your grandparents to be watching channels like Discovery or TLC, where it had a lot of mentions of these names, weird families, and just weird people all around. Though TLC needs no introduction, let's move on past the rest. The show would follow the family as they showed their day-to-day things, and they showed how they get along, how they live, and how they do their chores. Some of these chores and routines would be something called the buddy system. The buddy system was implemented because of James and Mitchell having too many kids. They would decide then that the oldest kids would help take care of the youngest, again making their buddy system. The buddy system being a system that requires the oldest of the kids to take care of some, if not most, of the youngest. To most people, this seems flawed, but as time would tell, this was a horrible mistake for the family, as you would guess. Any scallywag with a big heart would tell you that being the oldest sucks. In a big family, you mainly hear about how some or most of the kids feel like they have no room, they have no privacy, and that comes with this list of problems alone, like equal share of affection, spending time with certain family members, or having your own one-on-one time. As someone who is the oldest of 10 children, let me tell you, the problems lie deeper and apparently sinister than you think. Throughout the Duggars case, it would seem like the oldest girls were in charge most of the time of the kids, more so often than the boys. This would of course be for one of two reasons. One of the biggest reasons probably being the fact that the family is super religious. In fact, almost to the point where it's very cult-like. It even in some cases requiring the children of the family to want to date or see other people that's not part of the family. They would have to have a courtship. If you don't know what a courtship is, basically it just means your parents have to set up who you're with. Whether that's your wife, your fiance, these things can be set up in arrangements. Usually you wouldn't see this in American culture or even in normal religious stances, but of course in the heavier spots, you would still see this to this day. Again, riding the lines of the coattails of being a cult. The second thing that could have its welfare of degree and why it's just the women running the children and taking care of children rather than the parents and the boys as well. Well, this is because one of their oldest sons, Joshua, has some allegations underneath his belt about young kids, as it would come to find out. But we'll get into that evil soon enough. If being forced to be permanently a nanny to your own siblings wasn't rough enough, the kids, mainly the young women in the family, were raised with sad mentions of religious beliefs and stern growing ups. Some of this, though, would have its own habits in its hands of decisions and delusions that the family would perpetuate throughout time. What I'm meaning is, the girls, mainly the girls, were raised up to believe that you should always be there for your husband, both mentally and physically, along with the children that always come first. So you're being raised to be a slave for your husband and children, while also being a slave to children that's not yours. What we could guess from these statements and headlines, from the interviews from the mom, Michelle, and from the show itself, where they were raising their kids, again, mainly the women, to believe that they should almost act like slaves to their future husbands and children. With this wonderful style of parenting, one could only assume that the children would grow up to be wonderful people. But oh god, no. It's a tale as old as time. A super religious and very cult-like upbringing did nothing to these kids, but instead made them worse. Made them the worst type of human beings imaginable. The ones that do horrible, unforgivable, and ungodly acts, and then try to hide what they've done behind God's good name and teachings. And they always have the same type of line, almost as if it's a get-out-of-jail-free card. The whole, God has forgiven me. And then right after, they always talk about how they're seeking help or getting counseling, as if that helps the victims they hurt or the people they've wronged. And it never does. And this is the type of teachings that push people away from religious beliefs. I mean, obviously so. As the Duggar family blew up in fame, with multiple interviews and shows throughout the 2000s, they were lucky enough to get a spot with Oprah Winfrey. For those who don't know, Oprah Winfrey had her own talk show that was the talk of the walk for the longest time to a lot of people growing up in the 2000s. To any middle-aged woman or mom or even grandma, it was a great source to feel connected and, of course, to read books, as they were a big part of the book club, even Oprah starting her own Oprah sticker on books. I digress with the Oprah because she's not too big of a play into this, though, thanks to her, we learned something interesting about the Duggars. In 2006, an old woman would be called into Oprah's shows, telling them and explaining to staff that there was an evil to be contained in the family they were about to be hosting. Of course, this was the first instance anyone has ever heard anything negative about the Duggar family. Apparently, through police reports that started in 2002, we would be able to arrange a timeline. In 2002, one of James Duggar's daughters addressed that the fact that Joshua, the oldest son, had touched her inappropriately while she was sleeping. James, the dad, would ignore this and do nothing until a few years later. Then, Joshua would have to admit to it, forcing the dad to do something. At this point, he refused to get cops involved, even after saying how he would discipline Joshua himself. Basically, from what we know and what he talked about, that they had sent Joshua to talk to the church's elders, and the elders advised that they sent Joshua to a Christian Reformed program, where he would work with physical labor and a counselor to get over his sins and demons. Even after the program, this would not help Joshua's negative tendencies, and they would soon send him to a family friend for about a few months.
And that Josh had a tender conscience, and he was the one that came and shared on his own, even though the others really didn't know anything of his wrongdoing.
This is a young boy who has come to you with shocking information. What did he say? I mean, how did you respond to him? What was that like, that exchange?
There was so much grief in our hearts. I think as parents, we felt, we're failures. You know, here we tried to raise our kids to do what's right, to know what's right. And yet, one of our children made some really bad choices. And I think as a parent, we were devastated.
Did he explain why? I mean, was that a question that you asked?
He said he was just curious about girls, and he had gone in and just basically touched them over their clothes while they were asleep, and they didn't even know he had done it. And so we went, and the first thing was to protect the girls, and so we went in.
The girls all sleep together?
Yes, the girls had 2 bedrooms at the time, but anyway.
How many girls were we talking about?
We had 5 girls at the time.
Okay.
And so, but anyway, he went in and said he had done this, and so we first off, of course, really talked to him, and then we went and talked to all the girls
Because
and the children.
it was so important for us as parents to talk to our girls and make sure that nothing else had happened. And so
what did they say?
Well, one by one, as we talked with them, none of them were aware of Josh's wrongdoings.
So they learned about it from you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
How, at that point, he had said that he had done this to how many of the girls?
That was to 2.
Okay. And so, but neither one had any recollection of it?
They did not know.
And what was their reaction when they learned it from you?
They really didn't know. Actually, what happened was we asked them at first if anything happened, and then it was after some other things happened that we actually shared with them. And but we took a lot of steps. And first we tried to deal with this in-house as parents. We were in shock, and we were trying to figure out what was the next step. But really, looking back, we did the best we could under the circumstances.
You're saying, what am I going to do? You're saying, he says he's touched 2 of the daughters, and you don't know what to do, right?
We didn't know, because at that point now, nobody knew about it, and besides Michelle and I and Josh. And so we thought, what do we do with this information? And the girls, we talked to them, and they didn't know that anything had happened because they were asleep. And so we talked to him. We put all kinds of punishments on him. We watched him like all the time. I took him to work with me, and we just poured our life into him.
Were you scared? Like when you went to bed at night during that time frame, were you scared? Were you worried? You know, he's 14, he's having this problem. What's going to happen when we go to sleep?
Right. Nothing ever happened like that again in the girls' bedrooms after that.
Okay.
Okay, so we had safeguards that protected them from that. But there was another incident where, 2 different incidents where girls were like laying on the couch, and he had touched over the couch and actually touched the breast while they were asleep. And so, over the clothes. And so it was a very difficult situation, but as we've talked to other parents and different ones since then, a lot of families have said that they've had similar things happen in their families. And so, this is, for us, of course, this is public shame that our son did this back 12, 13 years ago.
And when you heard that the behavior had resumed, describe what that was like for you.
We thought, at first that Josh...
Mend the decks and hold the cannons, for the water's about to get bumpy, mateys. This is your official warning. We're gonna get into some heavy topics of SA and child endangerment, which is never a joke. So make sure you're strapped on tight, and make sure that if you're a little sensitive to some of the words I be saying, you take a break and take a pause. With the rumors of what Joshua was doing around the family and in the churches conspiring and taking place, it would come out that the leaks of information of Joshua's would come out, thankfully, due to the girl he was going to court. Her and her parents would actively make statements, even in a court and public hearings, about what had happened to show the people that the 19 kids and counting were not as nice as they seemed, were not as holy as they came off to be. When the Oprah Winfrey leaks came through, it was due to someone in their church who they have also had heard and talked about to these parents about what was going on, and took it into her own hands to inform other people of their correlations with the 19 kids and counting about their evil plans. And luckily we had as such. If it wasn't not for the parents or the old lady or anyone else spreading the rumor or the gossip of the fact that there might be evil within that family, the 4 or 5 victims, 4 or 5 of them just being in the family alone, would have never ever have seen any justice for anything that would happen. It would later come out that the parents tried to spin the narrative in saying that the information that was outed only hurted their female children even more than what had originally happened, the SA, because now everybody knows of the traumatic pasts that were coming to come into light. The Duggars did their best to hide this for years. They're obviously always making statements in churches, always doing headlines and interviews, and they would always say around the line the same things, that it was taken care of or nothing had really happened, even taking their own silence of their kids being the victims themselves. But again, if not for a phone call to Oprah's team, none of this would have came out to light in the first half. But Joshua did not see any jail time nor any consequences from his actions. Even soon after coming back from that alleged trip for a few months, none of the accusations would stick, and none of the court hearings or the case would be pressed any further. And after a long talk between both fathers of the family members, they would decide that as long as Joshua didn't do anything bad and stayed good on the good side of Jesus, that is, then there would be no need to press charges. I wonder why a rich cult family got off scot-free from doing something horrible. It makes you wonder. Not really, mateys. So in 2015, all the lies and secrets got out. By this time, everybody knows what they had done, and even whether it's hearsay or not, the fact of the matter is, the public deemed him a monster, as he was. None of the families could hide the fact that Joshua was a perverted monster who kept hurting young children.
Update: a federal jury finds Josh Duggar guilty on receipt and possession of child pornography. It took about 7 hours to decide the former reality TV star's fate. Fox 16's Mitch McCoy tracking the case. He joins us live in studio. Mitch, before we get to the verdict and more of it, let's talk about Duggar. Where is he tonight?
Well, Kevin, hello to you. He's in federal custody, which was up for debate on whether he should actually be in jail while awaiting sentencing. But the federal judge did decide to detain him. So he's preparing for his first night in custody since that jury's decision, which came back mid-morning, guilty on both charges. Over the last 6 days of this,
because the IP geolocated back into the Western District, somewhere in Northwest Arkansas.
So it was transmitting or receiving?
At this point, I probably best that you just listen, okay?
Okay.
We were able to get from this IP address one specific video of child pornography and one folder containing approximately 65 images of child pornography from a specific IP address.
3 years, something like that.
And then that hard drive, if you can remember.
That's probably 7 years, maybe. It's an old one.
Okay. That kind of helps us narrow things down.
Right.
So what?
I don't think there's any others in there. I mean, honestly, I can't remember. I might have an old, phone laying around or something somewhere.
In the RV or in the office?
I know there's an old phone in the back of this Honda, but we found it in the car. It's not like it's in the car.
What about any other type of? And now, when we talk about electronics, I know a lot of people often just jump to cell phones, tablets, laptops, things of that nature. But also electronic devices that store thumb drives.
So there's probably more than one thumb drive in there. I don't know how many in the office.
You're pointing at this one on the right?
In the office on the right. There's also two cameras in there. Both of those have the ability to record, I think, on them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if any of them actually have any SD cards or anything in them. I don't know.
Right. And those thumb drives, are those yours? Are they your co-workers or?
I don't know. I don't actually know because I don't think I have it. There might be one in that laptop bag as well. But they would all be, I mean, if they're here, they're here. I don't know. We find stuff in cars all the time.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
31-year-old Joseph was arrested and charged for lewd and lascivious behavior involving unlawful sexual activity with a minor. The 19 Kids and Counting alum allegedly molested a 9-year-old girl during a family vacation in Panama City Beach, Florida in 2020. According to the sheriff's office, the now 40...
When everything got out in the limelight, TLC finally had shut down their show, but at this point, the Duggars have already stabled themselves in the church's eyes. Everyone seeing how religious and good faith they were, they all decided to take what they were saying to truth to heart, as in, Joshua was not doing anything wrong, and the things he had done wrong, it were a mistake, and now he is on the righteous path of God yet again. Of course, this just being a lie that religious and Christian people love to spiel about how someone doing awful can be good now. While there are some cases of awful people redeeming themselves, I would not say anyone who goes against children has the opportunity. You see, they keep saying stuff like, God has forgiven me, God has shown me a new light. No, he hasn't. God wants you to stick a blunderbuss in your mouth, and so do I. God will not forgive you for your sins against children nor animals, and you are going to burn in hell no matter what you say. They don't care about this, of course. They're using the name of God as a falsity to hide their sins, as I had said earlier. So all this comes off as cheek and tongue. But really, we know what's going to happen as soon as they kick the bucket. They're going down to the depths below of Davy Jones's locker, and they're getting poked and prodded by flames and demons for the rest of their eternity. And good for it. It's awful to see that these parents will not stick up for their female children, the victims in this case, but instead decide to stick up for the fact of Joshua in every single interview, every single account they asked. Anytime Joshua was brought up into the light, they would defend him tooth and nail. Defend him almost ridiculously, while at the same time only talking about how all this information that's come out into the limelight has only hurt their daughters. But we know this not to be the case, as yes, I'm sure this probably hurt, and having this information unwillingly shared around you probably did mess you up a little bit. But at the end of the day, what's worse? Information messing you up or your own brother? They really should have took accountability and sent that man to prison. And if you couldn't send him to prison, well, you brought him into this world. It is my official opinion as a captain of the pirates that it is your responsibility to take him out of this world. Naturally so. You brought in this evil, allowed it to cultivate into a madness of a monster. It is your responsibility to take it out. I pray for their daughters and anyone else innocent in that family who's been victimized. And I'm willing to bet it didn't just stop at the female children. We get further proof that Josh was not rehabilitated at all and had not changed when a few leaks of a hacker group would come out against AHOY Mateys. AHOY Mateys being a dating website for cheaters. After a huge leak of data was displayed for everybody to see on the internet, it would come out in the limelight yet again that Josh was cheating on his wife, not with just one account, but 2 accounts. I don't know about you, mateys, me hardy crew, but I don't think someone who's really godly is going to cheat on his wife. But we already knew that, didn't we? The whole time it happened, he was preaching on and on about anti-gay and anti-homophobic nonsense. You know, the typical God hates gays, all the yada yada, misinterpretation of one of the words in the Bible, one of the quotes in the scripture, about how a man shouldn't be with a boy. That doesn't mean man on man, it's a lost translation of you should not touch little boys. But of course, religious people aren't going to talk about that. They want something that points towards the things they hate the most. And if you don't know, mateys, what do religious people hate the most? Gays, colored people, and any idea of fun. Because for them, fun is not okay. But what is okay is going behind God's back and hurting children. Apparently, the religious people, especially Christians, they love doing that. I mean, it's a pastime for them. I'm pretty sure in order to get up to be a high-grand priest, you gotta at least eat a few children along the way. However, it turns out he was catfishing a lot of women on the internet too, such places like Facebook and Instagram. And apparently, even with one of his mistresses, he tried to kill them. She would say stuff like, quote, he would throw me around the room and force me into weird or scary positions. And then he would try to pay me off. I'm assuming to pay her off to be quiet about it, but really it's giving me a ick. Kind of nasty that you're doing mean stuff to women while you have a wife and children, and at the same time doing stuff to children, thinking about children. What I'm saying is it's insane that religious people have cultivated this culture where they can be pieces of crap human beings, and as long as they pray to God, it's okay. It's not. Listen, God will forgive you for most of your sins, but again, if you involve women or children or even animals, Jesus Christ said it himself, those who would harm a child should have a millstone tied to their head and sunken into a bottom of a river. I mean, come on, guys. Jesus isn't leaning on it. You think his dad's going to be? Not at all. I mean, pick up the goddamn book you're preaching about. You're going to burn in hell. You messed with a kid. That's it. Game over. You forfeited your life. And while I'm on the subject, I also want to talk about how I don't understand nor appreciate all these people, again, mainly religious people, activating or accounting for people's humanity when it comes to dealing with pedophiles. What I'm talking about is, even to this day in the United States, there is not the death penalty for pedophiles like there should be, because a lot of people say that they have human rights. I say, if you go against the grain of society and all of humans who protect and keep children safe, animals safe, and don't hurt women, if you go against that grain, you are now inhumane. You have willfully decided to go against humanity's resources and sources to do something depravable, evil, and ungodly. And that makes you non-human. That makes you subhuman. Therefore, you do not deserve any of the laws or rights that get acquitted to said humans. You are not human. You are a rabid dog. And like any rabid dog that would bite a child, you should be put down. Again, do God a favor and put a blunderbuss in your mouth. In 2019, Joshua's workplace, a dealership, would be raided by FBI's and cops. The Duggars would make a statement about this shortly after, saying how it's not due to any past controversies, that in fact it is tied to a lawsuit dealing in renovation. However, it would come out that Joe was downloading CP and other files from the dark web and saving it to his work computer via Linux. When they showed up, when the cops showed up, he said something incredibly telling and stupid, something around the lines of, "Why are you here? Why? What happened? Did someone download CP here?" CP, of course, leading to child, you-know-what-a-thing. As if he wasn't the one who did it himself. That line would become later into play because through the whole court case of this incident, he would throw his colleagues under the bus, trying to push the blame on them. After texting his wife that same day that he'd be home late, texts on his phone and files are shown on his computer on his hard drive to be downloaded around the same time. So this dude literally said, "Hey honey, I'm gonna be home late, I'm busy working at the dealership," and really was browsing the dark web, yoing his hoe to ungodly and unforgivable things. So he tried to blame other coworkers for what he did, but luckily that didn't hold because not only did they have his hard drive, timestamps of him downloading this stuff, but it was not on any other computer except his. And it wasn't just on his computer. For those who don't know what Linux is an inside browser that when you open it on your computer, it basically opens another desktop, one that's different from yours. A lot of people use this to understand how coding works, how to understand how bugs and malware work on your computer, and other things. Really, it's a safe program to open up your computer to test things that would otherwise break your computer or harm anything in your desktop. As a falsity, think about it as a remote desktop opening. He was the only one to have this on his computer, and this is because he was, of course, downloading illegal stuff through Linux, a torrent, to get inside the dark web. The police and federal agents looking at his case and the evidence says that he is probably the worst of the worst, and one of the sickest offenders out there. Some of the stuff he was saving was known to be the nastiest of the nastiest. I won't go into too much detail because it's fucking sickening, but I will allude that it was much more than CP. It was a woman abusing her infant daughter. It was people dying. This was much more than just, the horrible people like Nova Online you see. This was like seriously in-depth, disgusting demeanors, something ungodly and unholy. And the icing on the poop cake, these kids in these videos and in these pictures were the same age as his children. Because make no mistake, dumbasses everywhere. I don't know how you see someone who has known SA against children allegations against them and think it's okay to have a kid with them. You're an idiot and you set your children up for failure and worse. Congratulations, you played yourself. Luckily for everybody, Joshua has been locked up in prison. He's getting 12 years in prison only, but at least the monster is locked up now. You see, I would have been pushing for the death penalty, but that brings me back to my earlier topic on how people still see these nasty motherfuckers as human beings. They're not. If they go after the children, women, or animals, they're not humans anymore. They're monsters who prey upon humans while looking like humans. Think of a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's really not that hard to understand. It really ain't. Some people out there look like me and you, but they have dead eyes and a nasty, diabolical mind that will do awful, awful things to anyone innocent and unknowing the second they get the chance. If you want any further proof, take a look at Nova Online. Even now, after all of his Discords are being bombed, he recently made a new Discord for Clash of Clans. A mobile game that children play. Not sure adults can play it too, but we know what this fucker's doing. We know what Joshua is doing. All these people are disgusting and bad people. They're all doing the same thing too, trying to cultivate a way of means to getting CP without getting caught. And make no mistake, I'm sure the religious groups have a lot to play in it. If you thought that was the worst of worst, I have something else for you. If you were thinking Joshua Duggar is the worst person in that family, you'd be close to right, as yes, he's the worst person, but there's a runner-up. Someone I had mentioned earlier, Joseph Duggar. Joseph Duggar and his wife, Kendra, they're being charged with lewd and lascivious molestation of victims less than 12 years old of age, along with false imprisonment. Again, his wife is also charged of the same thing. And it's very telling and scary that their children are all under 12. These people are monsters and they continue to keep doing monstrous things. And again, they're using the name of God and his teaching and preachings to hide behind their awful, awful demeanor, while at the same time the head of the families are doing everything they can to cover up these awful things that happen in the secrets of this cult-like family. So what should be your takeaway of this, mateys? Your takeaway should be that these people are fucking monsters who use kids as slaves to do the dirty work and to take care of other children, while at the same time smiling at everyone on TV and every church and hiding behind their God's good name to get away with their awful sins. It's pretty disgusting and it's pretty telling. And again, I would like to bring out my stance on the matter. Dead pedophiles don't reoffend, mateys. At the end of the day, if yours and yours are being targeted by a monster, shoot them in the fucking head. Because at the end of the day, the government, the police, they're not going to do anything to protect you or yours. So you got to take accountability in your own hands. Again, these people are fucking monsters. And if they just would have done what they were supposed to in the first place, get their fucking son in order, the whole family probably would have followed behind. But no, you taught your whole family that you can do awful and ungodly things, and God will still love you and will still accept you as our family. That's not the case. As I've said earlier, God will not care, God will not love you, and if you even think about hurting a child, you will get your come-ups. You can bet on that. I know we had a bit of a little one today, mateys. It was a long one, and it was filled with the Prevalent debacle, but I hope you all enjoyed. I know I enjoy talking to you guys and getting my opinions out there about these horrible monsters. Again, it's so disheartening to feel like these people aren't held accountable in any means or any way, but you better believe people like me are going to post their faces all over anywhere we can to get their name out there, because at the end of the day, if we all know about these monsters, we can all hold them accountable. They cannot hide these secrets if we all know about them. Well, I love you, scallywags, and I hope you enjoyed my video today. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Farewell, mateys!